Today's daf is daf mem gimel, and let's review the Mishnah on daf mem beis amid beis very quickly. Mudar hana michaver lo yishilenu v'lo yishal mimenu, lo yalvenu v'lo yilva mimenu, v'lo yimkar lo v'lo yikach mimenu. So there's a very big chiddush here in the Mishnah, which we have to understand, that there's a mudar and a madir, and we understand very well that the mudar is not allowed to borrow from the madir, not allowed to ask for a loan. He can't even receive something in a sale. But why does it go the other way around? That's what the Gemara is going to ask now on the top of that daf mem gimel. Bishlema lo yilvenu. I understand that the madir cannot extend a loan to the mudar because certainly the kamahanile, the mudar is getting benefit from the money of the madir because he needs that halva. El shelo yilvehemenu, but that the mudar cannot extend a halva to the madir. My kamahanile. Well, what's the problem here? The mudar ano is not getting ano by extending a loan. He's losing his money. It's the madir who gains something. And the Gemara is going to ask the same kasha again and again in different forms until finally it offers a teretz. Bishlema lo yilvehimenu. I understand that if the madir would extend a loan to the mudar, then the mudar is getting hano from the madir. V'lo yikach mimenu, even if the mudar is paying for an object, but he's still buying an object from the madir and getting hano to come as hani minei. Ella, but what about the reverse? Lo yishal himenu, my come as hani minei. Or according to the girsa of the Ran, a slightly different girsa, bishlem lo yilva mimenu lo yikach mimenu lo yishal mimenu to come hani le ella lo yashilenu, that the mudar is not allowed to lend something or lo yalvenu or extend a loan to the madir, v'lo yimkar lo, and the mudar cannot sell some object to the madir. My kom is hani minei. What prohibition is there if the mudar is giving hana to the madir? The mudar is not receiving hana. Again, if he borrows or he gets a loan or he purchases some object from the madir, then I understand the mudar is getting hana from the madir, and that's also. But the reverse, on Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, we have to reinterpret the Mishnah. Kegon shenodru hana zemizeh. There was a mutual iser hana and a neder that was taken both from the madir onto the mudar and from the mudar onto the madir. So it's absolutely correct that a mudar hana is allowed to lend his objects to the madir, but in this case, al mamidubar, we're talking about a scenario in which the mudar was madir the madir, so the madir now also becomes a mudar. And now we have the dissenting view of Abaye. Abaye Omar, let's take a break here and expand and insert a few words here. Abaye says that in a case where he's a mudar hanomi menu, and the Mishnah says that the mudar is not allowed to have any benefit from the madir, then even if it's a one-way street and there was only an iser hana that was imposed by the madir on the mudar, but not in the reverse, there was no reciprocal iser neder that was taken, but nevertheless, we still don't want to allow the mudar to extend a she'ela or a halva or a mecher to the madir. Why? Gzeira lishol mishum lahashil v'chein bekulim. The chachamim here were choshesh that maybe if the mudar is going to extend a loan or a lending to the madir, then maybe it'll go the other way of reverse as well. Mistakenly, the madir will extend a loan to the mudar. And the people involved in this neder of a madir and mudar will not be sensitive to the distinction. So from being Shoel, he might come to be Marshal, and from being Marshal, he might come to be Shoel. V'chein kulu, also in Halvan and Mekach, we're going to come to this violation of an Isur Hana, and therefore they institute this Gzera. And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Mem Gimel. And there are two parts to this Mishnah. This Mishnah, on the one hand, is a continuation of the Mishnah back on Daf Mem Gimel, Mem Beis Amid Beis, where we established that the Mudar Hano Mechaver Lo Yashileno Lo Yishal Mimenu. And this Mishnah is coming to clarify that even though there's an Isur on the Mudar to borrow something from the Madir, but there is a situation and a scenario, there is what we call a method of circumventing the halacha and finding a modus vivendi, a mechanics by which the mudar could, in fact, borrow something from the madir. And what the Gemara is going to try to set up here, based on this Mishnah, is possibilities in which the Hano will not go directly from the Madir to the Mudar, but through an agent in between. And thus, be makif, circumvent the Isur Neder. That's going to be the first part of this Mishnah. The second part of the Mishnah is going to explain how in certain circumstances you could allow the Mudar to benefit from this person through a different kind of hana. So let's go through the Mishnah. The Mishnah says the following. Amar lo, a person asks his friend, Hashileni parascha, can you lend me your cow? I need your cow to plow a field or to milk the cow, whatever it might be. Amar lo, and the owner of the cow says to the mavakesh, Eina pnuya, which literally means it's not free. In other words, right now it's working on my behalf. I can't lend it to you. But I think the mavakesh realizes that this is just a lame excuse, that the owner of the parah is coming up with some sort of a story to cover up for the fact that he really doesn't want to lend him the parah. The Omar, and now in response to the Eino Pnuya of the Bala Para, the Mavakesh declares a neder. Kodem Sodai Shani Choresh Boliol. I accept upon myself a konam that will prohibit me for the rest of eternity to be choresh with this para. So this is what's called Osar al Atzmo Charisha Sodeu Biporas Chavero. Now, again, on the psychological level, before we get to the nitty-gritty halachic chakira, this suffix in the Mishnah, perhaps we could say the following. There's a phrase in English, go fly a kite. As if to say psychologically, I asked to borrow something from you, you refused. You know what I'm going to say to you? I don't need your help. I don't need you to lend me whatever object I'm having. Whenever I do charisha with a parah, it's not going to be your parah. You refuse to lend me your parah. I never want to use your parah. But now the Mishnah goes into the following question. When the Madir, the Mavakesh, as we said, declares Kodam Sodai Shani Chorish Boliola, what is the emphasis here on Sodai? Is he saying that parah will never, ever do charisha in my field? Sodai, my soda is completely excluded from charisha from this parah, which would mean that no one else can take your parah and be chorish my field. Or, alternatively, let's de-emphasize the word Sodai, and let's emphasize the charisha aspect. And the Mishnah establishes that in Hayadarko Lachrosh, if the Madir, who's being Madir himself and accepting upon himself a Neder, is generally accustomed to personally get involved in Charisha. So then we interpret his Neder as hu oser al atzmo becharisha b'kol adam mutarim. He's only saying that I'm going to accept upon myself a radical change with regard to this para that you refuse to lend me, that I will not do charisha. But again, the emphasis is on the Maisa charisha, and he's saying, I won't do charisha with that para. He's not saying that somebody else will not do charisha with that part. Oh, Dilma, perhaps. It's ein dako lichrosh. He himself never does charisha. He's above that. He's an executive, a white collar executive. See, he doesn't get down on all fours to do the threshing. Then we interpret his neder as hu v'chol adam asurim. We're not going to say that his kavanah was to ask on himself charisha, because he never does charisha in any event. So the emphasis there shifts from the Maisa Harisha to the Sod itself. And what basically he's taking upon himself through this Neder is that the Sod will not benefit from your para. And that means that no matter who does the Harisha, whether it's me or it's going to be someone else, that's included in the Isur. So again, just to repeat, if he never does the charisha, then it doesn't make sense to say that he took upon himself a neder not to do the charisha, but rather he's saying that his sada will not benefit from this para vis-a-vis charisha. No one is going to be able to be choresh his field. Now let's go back to the first scenario. Hamudar anome chavero, the einlo ma yochal. Is there a way of circumventing a violation of this Isur Hana through Neder in a case where he has no other supply and source for food? Holech Eitzel Chavani. Let the Madir do the following. Go to a Chenvani, some sort of middleman. The Omer, he declares, Ish Ploni Noder Mimeni Hana, Ve'enu Yodeh Ma Ese. I don't know what to do. How do I circumvent this neder? Vehu, now the Chanvani, no sein lo, uba v'notel mizeh. The Chanvani will extend mazon to the mudar anah. So the mazon is not coming from the madir to the mudar. And therefore, the tashlum of mazon is not coming from the madir to the mudar. And that's called hana ba'kifin. The mudar is getting hana, but indirectly through the agency of the chenvani. And the Mishnah adds another possible way of allowing the mudar to get achila from the madir. Hayabeso livnos. The mudar needs to build a house, or gdero ligdar, or to put up a fence, sadeo liktar, or to plow or harvest this field. Holy chetzel pol. And therefore the madir goes to the pol of the omer, and he says to the pol and to the workers, Ish ploni mudar mimeni hanov, v'eni yodeh ma ese. So they get the message. V'hein osim imo uboim v'notlin schar mizeh. They will build his house, these polim, or the fence, or harvest the crop, and then they'll come back and take the payment and the wages from the person who told them that we have to find the solution to the problem. So even though, in effect, the madir is paying for the polim to work on behalf of the mudar, but nevertheless it wasn't direct. And hoyu ma'alchem baderech, if a person who's also lehenos mimenu is on the derech, v'elo mayochal, The mudar has no food. No saying li echad. The madir gives his mazon to a person. L'shum maton as a gift. And now the person who receives the gift will fork over this mazon to the mudar, v'allah mutarba. And the mudar is allowed to accept this gift because he's not getting the gift directly from the madir, but rather through the agency of no sein li'echad, of somebody who's there and will accept this maton and pass it on. Another possible way of circumventing these neder, im eni mochem acher, if there's no other person that the madir could give the mazon to as a gift, meiniach al hasela or al goder, he takes the food, puts it on an open boulder or fence. V'yomer, he declares, Harei hein mufkarim l'chol mi sheyachnos. Let anyone come and take it. And then the mudar Allah notel es hamazon v'ochel, and he eats it. And again, he's not getting direct hanoah from the madir, but rather he's being zochim and hefker. Rabbi Yossi ose. So the question is, why does Rabbi Yossi prohibit this circumvention through hefker? Omer Rabbi Yochanan, my time into Rabbi Yossi, kosaver hefker kematona, ma matona ad isa. Mirshus no saying l'shus makabel af hefker adi osi mirshus zoche l'shus makabel. Hefker is not chal until somebody picks it up. And this is the equation that Rabbi Yossi posits between hefker and matona. And if that be the case, then what we have here is a problem, because until somebody else is zoche, it still belongs to the mafkir, which means that the mazon never left the reshus of the mafkir until the mudar was zoche in it. So he's being nena directly from the madir. And that's why Rabbi Yossi has a problem, because there's no hefker until someone else claims ownership. This, by the way, is the logic of Tosfos at the beginning of Psachim, that bittul could not be mitam hefker, because when a person's vatal is chametz, according to Rabbi Yossi, it never leaves his reshus until someone else picks it up. And when a person's vatal is chametz, no one else picks it up. Masa Rabbi Abba raises the following objection to Rabbi Yochanan, based on a brisa. The madir wants to give hanoah to the muda, and he's allowed to be mafkir his mazon, v'allah, and the mudar no tel v'yochel. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Oser, Rabbi Yossi, Emosai, when do I say it's osur for the mudar to be zoch in this mazon from hefker? Bizman shenidro kodem lefkero. That's only because he had already taken the neder. The madir already asered the mudar and hanoah before he made it hefker. And here we turn to Mem Gimel Beis. Aval hayef kero kodem linidro harezem mutar. If he was mafker at first, he said about his mazon, let it be hefker, and only then he took the neder. Then there's no chalos iser of mazon, and the mudar is allowed to pick up the hanoah and the mazon from hefker. But that's against Rabbi Yochanan. If Rabbi Yochanan is correct, Adi Yossi says zoche mali nidro kodem lefkeru, mali hefkeru kodem nidro. Even if he was mafkirid before the neder, it's irrelevant. Why? Because the mudar is only going to benefit from it at the point that he's zochim in a hefker, and at that moment in time, it leaves the reshus of the madir and goes into the reshus of the mudar. So in both these cases, whether it's nidro kodem lefkero, or even in the case of efkero kodem lenidro, in both these cases, the mudar hanoah is benefiting from the mazon directly from the madir. And therefore, we must conclude that even according to Rabbi Yossi, something that's hefker leaves the reshus of the mafkir before someone else is zochen.